Webgility's recent survey of 800 online sellers who do their own inventory in-house revealed some interesting insights. So we sat down with our CEO and founder, Parag Mamnani, to get his thoughts and wisdom on the survey results and inventory as a whole.
The pandemic changed the entire process for most consumers, and they were forced to buy things virtually and online. But I think that the trend of people shopping online is not new. It's been around for a few decades now. And convenience, it's all about convenience, right? The fact that you can sit on your computer and on your phone now and just order whatever you want. It gets delivered to you now, but that potentially within a matter of hours to your doorstep, without you having to change from your PJs. That's a pretty cool thing, right? But yeah, e-commerce is here to stay, and it's the pandemic sort of pulled the demand forward and accelerated things, but the trajectory is still very much on track, even with retail reopening now. And if anything, consumers have now become I guess global shoppers, right? Like, you're able to buy products from a seller from anywhere around the world, which is just fantastic for certainly consumption and variety and access. And yeah, so convenience is I think the sort of the root of what's really helped propel e-commerce, because it's just so easy for consumers to be able to buy. There's been a massive change, and it's happened over the last several decades. It used to be that retail was all about local, right? You'd go to your local retailer, and they had stuff in the back or on the shelves in the front, and you'd pick stuff up and you're out the door. And as retailers grow, they certainly started to have warehouses and so forth. But what really disrupted it, I think, is just globalization and the access to kind of a supply chain that's international, right? So the ability to produce goods outside of America and be able to, have them shipped in a reasonable amount of time from when an order is placed. You were not restricted by the size of your retail location or perhaps even the size of your warehouse. And then you had, obviously, over now 15, 20 years back, you had sort of the rise of Amazon's fulfillment centers, and they sort of really pioneered the model of, hey, just ship the goods to our warehouse and we'll ship them for you, right? And that led to this second order massive wave where it wasn't just, okay, I don't have to produce it in my own location. I don't even have to store it in my own location, right? Like, I can get a third party to sell it, to store it. And then that's evolved into, well, I can get the third party to even list and sell it, like, with the Amazon marketplace. So, it's given rise to a whole new breed of e-commerce sellers who don't produce the goods. Somebody else produces them outside of the country, or maybe even in country now, but mostly international manufacturing goes straight to a warehouse that's not owned by the retailer. It's sold on a website that's not theirs, and is delivered by a shipping processor that they have no sort of control over. They just pay them. So effectively, e-commerce has gone from being this really, inventory heavy, let me go store the packages and put them in a box and put a label and send it to customers, to let me watch the numbers move around on a screen, right?
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling how that's all evolved. As I look into the future, I think some sort of a hybrid model, some diversification, where you're able to produce some things, in an outsourced way versus, Amazon's, last year launched their warehousing. So not only can you do, fulfillment by Amazon, but they're now just providing you storage space, right? They accumulated all the storage space due to the pandemic, and now they're able to actually sort of sublease that out to merchants. To some extent, it makes things a lot easier for merchants, because now they don't have to think about managing inventory in-house, and they can use these providers. But on the other end, they're now, they really have to find that competitive advantage to separate themselves, because now maybe the uniqueness that they had of being able to store their stuff and get it faster is gone, right? Like now that's sort of accessible to everyone, right? Like more merchants have access to those capabilities. So it sort of gets to, I don't want to digress, but it sort of gets to the heart of entrepreneurship, right? Like the field's definitely getting leveled in terms of merchants having access to all of these capabilities. And that's, I think, sort of good for small businesses for sure, because they are not limited by warehouse space or even staff to manage the inventory inside their locations. They can be more creative with how they do inventory management in their business. Many techniques, they've sort of become techniques, but they're really just ways to optimize for cash flow, right? Ultimately, you're trying to figure out, how do I optimize so that I don't have stock that's just sitting in my warehouse and that's taking a really long time to be sold, and that space could be occupied by more faster moving products. I don't know if there's a technique that is really well suited for a seller, but it depends on what catalog you have, what your business model is. If your fulfillment promise is, I'm going to get it to you the next day, then you're going to have to employ a different technique. If your goods require customization, it's going to have a different technique. Now business owners need to understand what the different techniques are, and really start to get smarter about managing their inventory. And fortunately, lots of great inventory management solutions out there that can kind of give you some guidance. But this is where analytics really becomes really critical, right? Talk to a lot of sellers who I think forget how much more money they could make, what kind of cash flow they could generate by just optimizing their inventory. And that often comes down to being able to analyze your sales and your historical kind of inventory trends. Inflation, it's real. It's not just it's not just the price of eggs, right? It's everything, right? Like the goods that our merchants are buying. Inflation is, as it sort of seems to have peaked last year, but it's a real thing, and that is what's causing a lot of merchants to be very thoughtful about how much stock they keep in house. Inflation's also affecting, the rate and potential kind of, growth rates that they saw last year. Those growth rates have come down across the board, right? And those inventory levels, and hopefully all merchants feel a sense of comfort that, even if they're a small business, I mean, the largest of businesses are having these problems, right? I mean, I am not surprised by that answer from most of the sellers, because, in these times, it's important to be more prudent than to be more aggressive. And, until last year, I think everyone was really leaning in on accelerated demand and starting to stock up more. And, everyone's starting to sort of see the pullback in the economy, and, there's potential recession ahead of us. So who knows what the impact will be on consumer behavior. And so, yeah, I think it's very prudent for especially newer businesses to be thoughtful about not, overextending themselves and waiting for the demand to come in, and really understanding what that change in consumer behavior is before starting to pile up, I guess, more in terms of their warehouses or stock. Yeah. It will be prudence, but I guess folks that have been here for 4 to 5 years, they've maybe seen the pre-pandemic years, and so they understand what demand looks like when there wasn't this crazy mad rush to, shop online. And also, a lot of the, I guess, the free money that was flowing around, right? Folks that have been around for 4 or 5 years kind of know and have hopefully some historic context of what their demand was pre-pandemic, what the acceleration was into the pandemic, and now they're also seeing sort of potentially the flat or the downslope now. So hopefully they can use, a wider range of that experience to make even, better decisions. But yeah, the folks that have just seen the COVID highs and not seen the pre-pandemic sort of trends, they should certainly be a lot more mindful than more experienced sellers. I was a bit surprised when I read that. I can only surmise that folks have done a lot of experiments on various channels, and like as they reach certain level of maturity of 6 7 years in business, they've sort of really found their sweet spot of the one channel that really works for them.
Yeah.
Where they've maybe fine-tuned where they're making money. I think experimenting on multiple channels is a must do for every merchant, right? You have to try a lot of different channels until you can find that sweet spot of what really works. We know even during the tough times and especially during COVID when, single channel merchants, I mean, there's also risk, right? If you only have your own store and you're not selling on a marketplace, what's the impact on the consumer behavior? Are they going to be looking on search engines more, or are they going to go straight to marketplaces where they can get fast delivery, right? If you're only on a marketplace, what happens if the marketplace decides to shut down your category, or you had a delay in shipment and now your account's blocked for a couple of weeks? Like, really, retailers aside, I think every business book would tell you, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Multiple channels are absolutely key. But you also, again, just like how you manage your inventory, you want to be very thoughtful about where you sell. It takes a little bit of time, obviously, to really figure out what your sweet spot is and hit the right margins, and you understand your cash flow and the capital needs of your business. And yeah, there's no reason to really sort of mess with that. But again, I'm a firm believer in growth and to grow faster. And always sort of challenge yourself as an entrepreneur. And so you should always be looking at, what are some new channels, what are new marketing techniques, what are ways in which we can expand. And certainly, just have to weigh the balance of how much you invest or lean into kind of new ideas and experiments. And, again, when there's adversity, certainly the most sort of creative solutions emerge, right? Like, I mean, who knew there would be such a thing as buy online, pick up in store? E-commerce was very hard before. And I think e-commerce is actually very easy now, but easy's not good, right? Like, that just makes it easy for your competitors as well.
Absolutely.
So how do you continue to make money when the playing field's leveled, right? So yeah, I'm always a firm believer, especially even for Webgility as a business, right? We always have to be innovating, right? You have to constantly be looking and trying new things. Otherwise, another competitor's just, I guess a few weeks away or potentially from launching something that, gets them ahead, right? So you gotta constantly keep pace. Man, I don't know how many merchants I've talked to that when you talk to them about profitability, they always go back to their business P&L and they're like, this is how much money I made. And that's their business profitability, which totally makes sense. But when you actually dive in and try to understand which of your products made you money, that's when most of them really stutter. And I think that's where you find your edge. What products are you selling? At what cost? What did it cost for you? How much did it take for you to fulfill? And what were your sales? If you can get down to product and order level profitability, now you're really getting to the heart of the unit that's making you money, right? And most often sellers tend to look at profitability as a business level. In fact, you'd be surprised to hear a lot of merchants just look at their cash flow and think that that's profit, right? And ultimately, it's like you got to be thinking about SKU level profitability so that you can really optimize, again, your catalog. You can optimize the sales of that SKU. And in fact, even if you're thinking of multi-channel, it's not that big of a task if you're going to launch a handful of SKUs on another channel. Right? You don't have to take your entire catalog and sell it on a new channel, right? Like if you've found those SKUs that really move. So yeah, again, being able to understand your SKU level profitability is key, but it's not an easy task, right? Yeah, I'm a big believer in getting down to some of those details so you can really get a sense of what's working in your business, and that's how you find, the edge. And it's great if you're overall making profit in your business, but wouldn't it be great if you could really accelerate that profit growth by identifying what's really moving in your catalog. No, I mean it's kind of like I don't understand it, or I don't care what's happening with my money. Like that just doesn't make any sense, right? Like how are you running a business if you don't have a sense of your financials? And I understand certainly the hesitation, and we got to find people who really understand that getting into their financials and really making sense of the dollars is what's going to help them grow faster. It's going to help them understand really how their business is performing at the level that's needed. And it doesn't mean you need to become an accountant. You don't need to know everything, but you want to have a good sense of what's happening. It's kind of understanding sort of the basics of accounting and just basics of financials. That hey, I sell on all of these channels. What's my revenue trend? What's my profitability trend across my channels? Which products sold more? Which products sold less? What's my profitability like at a SKU and order level? It doesn't have to be daunting, and accounting is not about compliance, right? Accounting doesn't have to be just about compliance. Yes, you have to file your taxes, and yes, you have to be in compliance with the government regulations, but really that financial data has so much power that it can unlock a lot of insights to help you be more successful. You start to sell on marketplaces, your fees add up. I mean, you're looking at 20 to 30% of your sales, of your revenue is going just into fees, right? So it's really important to sort of understand that so that you can continue to fine tune, because that's where I guess that's the difference for a lot of merchants between making money and losing money. And it can also be the difference between making a lot of money and making very little money, right? Yeah. And so that it's not about closing. It's not just about closing your books. You certainly need to do that, but you need to have a really good pulse on, where you're making your money and what the trends are. So understanding your accounting and financials is really key. When I looked at some of these survey responses, not surprised that, on average, merchants are spending 5 to 10 hours a week, some even 20 hours a week on managing inventory, right? Also, excuse me, not surprised that a lot of people are still relying on Excel to do analysis, right? Again, so much wasted time and energy. At the end of the day, I would say, all of these are solvable problems. There's user-friendly technology that's out there. And again, Webgility offers really great onboarding, so we're able to really help merchants understand what's happening and get them set up correctly. We have lots of, help guides and resources. But, I think to be a successful multi-channel merchant and to continue to accelerate and grow in the future, you've got to employ technology, and not just technology for selling online, but you need to have put all the right automation and intelligence tools in place so you have a really good sense of how your business is doing, and you have control, right? You have control to toggle and change the levers of your business to continue to grow. And would love to follow up in the future and talk more about specifics, but this is a very, really interesting survey. I'm sort of glad to see some of the responses we got, and really tells us we're focused on the right problems, because we still have so many merchants that aren't adopting automation solutions and are still relying on Excel and not looking at profitability in the right way. And so there's lots of opportunity, which is very exciting for me.
For more detail on the inventory study, check out the full report by clicking the link in the description.